Hyperthyroidism is not nearly as common as hypothyroidism, yet hyperthyroidism can actually be a lot more dangerous. Hyperthyroidism, as it sounds, is a condition where the thyroid gland is producing too much thyroid hormone as opposed to hypo, where it's producing too little. And so when you're hyper, this can cause a dramatic increase in metabolism. Now, as good as that might sound to a lot of people, trust me, it's not. This can bring on rapid weight loss, but you don't want that in this form because it can also come with an irregular heartbeat, nervousness and anxiety, sweating, eye problems, diarrhea, menstrual changes, and risks of some really bad things happening like heart attacks. 1% of adults approximately have hyperthyroidism compared to 5% of adults, or maybe even more, that have hypothyroidism. Now, when we look at what's causing it here, you very often see Graves' disease. This is an autoimmune disorder that will manifest itself in the form of low TSH levels, high T4 and high T3. And you have something that's slightly less common. It's called T4 toxicosis. And this is where you have high T4 and normal T3. And this can more often occur in inflammatory conditions where the inflammation is inhibiting your ability to convert from T4 to T3. And then you also have what's called subclinical hyperthyroidism, where you have TSH is low, but T3 and T4 are normal. So what's causing all of this to happen? So as we mentioned, Graves' disease, an autoimmune disease, is very common, and one kind of common symptom of this that you'll see is when people have bulging eyes. Another cause is Hashimoto's. This is an autoimmune condition that has a lot of inflammation resulting from it, and this inflammation disrupts the cells where T4 and T3 are produced. Now, it doesn't just suppress their release and their release and production, and it doesn't just stimulate their release. It actually just messes with it back and forth. So you can have 1 to 2 months where, because of Hashimoto's, your thyroid is overactive, and then for a while it can go back to being underactive, and it can bounce all over the place. And this is a very chaotic way in which to suffer. Then another cause can be nodules on the thyroid. These can cause an increase in thyroid production, thyroid hormone production, and this is more common when iodine is insufficient, most commonly seen in the third world and developing countries where they're not getting enough dietary iodine. Now, conventional treatment will either use medications to suppress thyroid function, or they will use radiation to destroy the thyroid, or in some cases the thyroid will be entirely cut out and removed. Now, I don't know about you, none of those sound super fun to me. So let's talk about things that one might be able to do to address things otherwise. Now, of course, if your doctor is saying you have to do something, I can't tell you not to do that thing because I'm not a doctor. I'm definitely not your doctor. But you may want to consult also with, say, a functional medicine doctor specializing in the thyroid who can give you more personal guidance. Now, in terms of testing, most doctors won't do a full thyroid panel. But in reality, why would you cut something out of your body, cut out an organ without even having done a full blood test to see fully what the complete picture is of what's going on there? It's wild. So what you want to test is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, total T4, total T3, free T4 and free T3, reverse T3, your free T4 index, T3 uptake, TPO, thyroglobulin antibodies, and TSI-TSH receptor antibodies. So there's a lot of things that you need to test here, and usually your doctor might test for, just maybe TSH, maybe T4, maybe T3. So now that we understand a little bit about these things like Graves' and Hashimoto's that are underlying the hyperthyroidism, what causes those? Well, one of the biggest things that you see causing it is gut dysbiosis, problems with the microbiome. People who have Graves' disease, for example, have much less microbial diversity, and they have certain microbes that are showing up at much higher levels than in healthy people, and certain specific microbes that are showing up at much lower levels than in healthy people. There have been animal studies where they showed that gut bacteria are actually regulating intestinal iodine uptake, and this is leading, if it's not going well, to thyroid hormone degradation, and it's actually messing up with the circulation of thyroid hormone in the system. And so this can really throw things off and contribute to either increased or decreased thyroid hormone levels in the body. And then it's not just the basic gut dysbiosis of these kind of bacteria, but also you have to think about E. coli and H. pylori infections that can very commonly be going on here and contributing to these kinds of autoimmune situations. Then you also want to think about gluten sensitivity. So in gluten, in like bread, for example, you have gliadin, and this is the protein portion of gluten. And weirdly, it has a similar structure to thyroid tissue. And so if you have a gluten sensitivity, and you have leaky gut, as so many people do these days, right? That gliadin manages to sneak through the leak in the gut and gets into your bloodstream. Your bloodstream says, hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. It's like somebody who just manages to sneak into like a high security facility. They say, you're in big trouble. And not only are you in trouble, we're going to put a picture of you up on the wall in our security office so that all of our security guards see what you look like and not just attack you if you try to sneak back in here again, but will attack anyone they encounter who happens to look like you. That's bad news. And here's why. Because your thyroid tissue actually looks a lot like gliadin. And so this can lead your immune system to start attacking your thyroid because it thinks it's just some more of this gluten that managed to sneak through. It's bad news. And people with Graves' disease are very commonly sensitive to gluten. Chronic stress is another big issue, and the effects that chronic stress can have on HPA axis dysregulation. HPA axis dysregulation was formerly kind of misnomered as chronic fatigue or adrenal exhaustion. And this is where your signals between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals are being disrupted, very much contributed to by chronic stress. And so in the HPA, you have that P, which is the pituitary. And the pituitary and the thyroid are supposed to be working together to regulate thyroid hormone production. If your pituitary is getting a bit messed up, you got some issues that are going to happen because of that. You can also have other infections. It's not just H. pylori and E. coli that we're thinking about here, but you can also be dealing with things like Epstein-Barr and hepatitis C. And then to go from another angle, mercury toxicity is a big one. And if you have a history of eating like tuna, for example, or just swordfish, things like that, you probably have some serious mercury toxicity to be dealt with. You should probably seek out a practitioner who specializes in chelation therapy, ideally with something like DMSA or EDTA or DMPS. And this mercury toxicity, why is this a problem? Well, mercury is going to mess you up in so many ways, but specifically here, it's disrupting thyroid hormone by interfering with certain compounds that are responsible for activating and deactivating thyroid hormones in the system. And then, of course, nutrient imbalances are something to be thinking about here, especially in the form of vitamin D and iodine and selenium. So you want to make sure you're getting good sources of those. Vitamin D, it's, ideally you make it in the sun. The vast majority of people in the world are not making enough just from being in the sun. So it's a great thing to take supplementally as a D3-K2 combination, ideally. And then in terms of diet, you probably want to look at something like the AIP, autoimmune protocol diet in the beginning, and then you can eventually transition to something more closely approximating the paleo diet. And then having lots of antioxidants in your diet, antioxidants from plant sources, antioxidants from a supplement like a liposomal vitamin C, antioxidants from something like taking molecular hydrogen or astaxanthin. And these antioxidants help to offset the oxidative stress that these autoimmune conditions are causing. You can also think about like the Mariva form of turmeric as being really good, and having a good source of EPA and DHA from fish, krill, or algae oil. And then also glutathione, master antioxidant, right? Don't want to forget about that one. So this is a great time to think about taking liposomal glutathione. And then, as I mentioned, iodine and selenium, you want to get those dietarily. Iodine, you don't want to go to a supplement because you don't want to overdo it. So just having a modest amount of dietary iodine and understanding where your iodine levels are at to know if you need to go for more or less is important. And then also zinc and vitamin A and magnesium are important supportive elements here. And then a supplement to think about is acetyl L-carnitine. This can actually help to reduce some of the negative effects of hyperthyroidism. And then in terms of herbs, you can think about things like bugleweed and lemon balm and motherwort, and these are actually helpful in balancing hyperactive thyroid function. And one last note, I'm not a doctor, can't prescribe drugs, definitely not, but one thing to consider and just have a conversation with your doctor about if you've done all of this other stuff, right? Like if you've sorted out your gut and you are not consuming gluten and you got your mercury down, you're still having problems, well, then you can also consider something like low-dose naltrexone, which has been shown to be quite remarkably effective and has pretty minimal side effects. So that's just, another thing. I'm not a doctor. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a pharmacist. I'm just sharing with you fun information that then you can have a conversation with your doctor about that you might not have been aware of otherwise. So if you are dealing with hyperthyroidism, let me know down in the comments what you found to be effective. And if any of this has helped to move things along for you, or if you've learned something today new that really jumped out for you, let me know in the comments. I'm always curious to know what really connects with people. It helps me get better at doing this. And if you want to support us, I would be so grateful if you would just go down and leave us a like and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And then maybe even check out our website, addictivewellness.com. We've got a lot of treats over there I think you would really enjoy. Thanks again for joining me today, guys. Hope you have a fantastic day and look forward to seeing you again next time.